Okay lah, I tell you everything. The thing that I really want is like this really nice like hand-woven bag, right? But if I ask myself, would a bag add more joy to me than say going on a small holiday? Hi everyone, I'm Audrey, the Chief Dreams Architect of Playmula. Our mission at Playmula is really to build positive financial emotional resilience for a flourishing life and really thinking about how we can go beyond just pure financial literacy, the knowledge, the budgeting, the savings, to really understanding how we can build positive emotional resilience, right? Because money is such an emotional thing in our lives. How can we begin to understand our emotions in a way that helps us to really build financial well-being, right? So that we don't end up getting stressed by money, but essentially have money work for us. And joined with me today, I have Kathleen, whom we're very excited to have with us. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Audrey. I'm really glad to be here.
We're so excited. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I'm graduating next year. And the job market is really scary, and I'm really scared for my finances as well. I need to rent, it's just a lot. And yeah, I've heard about Playmula, but I'm not really sure about what it's doing. And I'm really glad that I have you here to explain me about these things. So tell me more about financial well-being.
So, financial well being essentially has a component around emotional regulation, and that's essentially where we begin to understand the role of emotion in our money decision making or even in our money behavior. Oftentimes, actually, money is such an emotional thing, right? We find ourselves feeling anxious, worried, perhaps even embarrassed, right? Or even there's a sense of shame around the way we may be managing our money. So with us at Playmola, a lot of times it's really about asking ourselves, how can we begin to understand our emotion, come to awareness, and come to a sense of self-reflection, right? So that we can really make money work for us and to really have mastery over money.
So at Playmola, there is a very intriguing thing that I've begun to learn, which is around money narrative. And so money narratives are inherently the scripts, the stories, the belief systems that we may have heard from our parents, our grandparents, the media, or even society, right? And so, an example of a script could be essentially money is security, right? Money is for a sense of hoarding, right? Because if I hoard, then I feel a sense of security. So these are maybe a bit more challenging or maybe a little bit slightly more negative scripts around money. But there are also the positive ones, right? Like, for instance, money can be a tool for a flourishing life.
So Kathleen, what are some of the scripts that you've heard as a young person?
I think personally, from my parents, they want me to save more and think about whether the spending is worth it or not. So I'm actually a bit of a saver, and I'm not very sure what kind of money scripts is this, and if it's negative or positive, if there is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point because your
Mhm.
parents are probably very prudent as well. And in our society, in our context, a lot of times money is for security, right? It
Right.
gives us a sense of the ability to hang on to something. The challenge for us really is to ask ourselves if we may be overdoing it, right? Because when we begin to overdo the hoarding or the saving, we end up not really knowing how to perhaps invest or enjoy life,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Because
totally.
financial well-being is really also about enjoying the experiences that we have in our life, and knowing how to enjoy our lives, in moderation, is also something important for our mental health and well-being. And so it may be slightly challenging when it becomes too much of hoarding, like your treasure collecting a
Mm.
lot of times, but you may want to rethink some of the script to say, okay, money is an enabler for positive experiences, right? To grow in different types of experiences. Money can also be an enabler in helping me to have a flourishing life. So this is something to think about as well.
So it's like reframing your perspective around money so that you can use it to your purpose.
Absolutely. And you're spot on with the term reframing, because the thing with money and our financial journey is that it's never cast in stone, right? And because we go through so many of life's transition, whether you become a married person, you're a person who begins to buy your first home, you may have children, you may have aging parents, there may be emergencies that happen along the way. The key thing really is to build resilience, have a positive narrative that serves you, such that even in challenging times, one can begin to ask ourselves, okay, is this money narrative actually serving you? Is the way in which I'm actually thinking about my money, spending my money,
Right.
acting my money in a way that works for me and for my family or for the society?
Right. So positive and negative is actually asking yourself whether what you're doing with money is serving you or not,
Absolutely.
right? Oh,
Absolutely.
that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that awareness of knowing and asking this question, right? Is money working for me?
Yeah.
Or am I enslaved to money? Right?
Oh,
That's a big thing for us in our society.
that's really, really real.
Yeah, and that's where, we learn the different tools, right? We learn to experience different money behaviors. And so in Playmula, we also have the money personality quiz. That's something that you can try out to figure out what kind of a money behavior you are predominantly are. You could be a thrill seeker, a spender, competitive achiever, even a treasure collector or a steward, right? So finding out what these money narratives mean for you and these money personalities, you can check it out on our website, playmula.com, could give you a sense of, a little bit more of an awareness of who you are and what your dominant money personalities are.
Okay, so if I were to take the test and I find out I'm a saver or hoarder, what do I do with it?
Yeah, a lot of times it's really about then asking yourself, what are some of the areas in life where these behaviors manifest, right?
Okay.
Does it manifest when you are, for instance, stressed about money, right? And then, or is it that, because of these dominant narratives that you have, that money is security, money is for saving, that it comes up to you where, you've got your paycheck and then after you realize that, oh, I have to save, I cannot invest, I cannot spend it, right? And sometimes spending is also a form of self-care, of course in moderation, right?
Yeah.
So knowing then that, okay, if my personality is a treasure collector, what do I need to tweak in my behavior or my habits so that it can serve me? And that's really where the 5 pillars of money come in, where we can really begin to ask ourselves, okay, now that I've saved X amount of money and maybe a little bit too much, can I put it into giving or can I put it into experiences, right? Can I invest it as well?
Right. So, okay, let me backtrack a bit. Is there a personality that you have to strive towards, or is it all neutral, like, oh, you're this kind of person, you stick to it throughout, or
Well, if you think about money personality, there's typically a dominant narrative or a dominant personality, right? So if, for instance, you are a treasure collector, the chances are is that that is a dominant trait, right? A behavioral trait that would emerge. I would say, one thing that a person can perhaps work towards is being a steward, right? A steward looks at money in a rather neutral way. And a steward is really a personality where you're seeing that money can be a tool that could be for your family, for others, for society. And the thing with stewardship is really around how you allocate your money, right, across the 5 pillars of money. Right, save, earn, give, spend, invest in a way that is moderate, in a way that is actually healthy. And a steward is really one person that really thinks about money for the next generation. Because the good news or the challenging news is that we cannot take our money into the grave. So the money that we have is really for the next generation.
right? So it's about detaching yourself from money and using it to do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, and something that you and I were speaking earlier also is that money is for impact, right? So creating a sense of purposefulness in your life to do whatever you want, right? To have a clear idea of, whether it's for travel, whether it's for self-improvement, whether it's to invest in, a home that you can call your own, right? These are different areas in which you can, use money for. But at the end of the day, can we also use money for a larger impact within the community, within society?
So I want to clarify a few things after what you said about the trade-offs. I really like that part, but I'm just curious about how do you manage what to trade off and what not to trade off.
This is a really good question because oftentimes we as young people, we may not even know what is it that we value, right? And when we hit that mode of wanting to impulse purchase something, or we think we really want something, we think we really, really, really want it. But if we can actually hit pause and actually take time to reflect, right? Then we can really ask ourselves, actually, what means more to me? So for instance, in this case, okay lah, I tell you everything. The thing that I really, 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 really want is like this really, really nice, like hand-woven bag, right? But if I ask myself, would a bag add more joy to me than, say, going on a small holiday with my family, like my baby, my husband? The reality is actually the experience. And I mean, in life, sometimes we strive to have a lot of things, but at the end of the day, these things don't add like joy, right? In like the grand scheme of things. And sometimes we have to choose. In some of our cases, we don't have infinite, budget. So then we have to be, discerning on what matters most to us. So I think this is also another point of self-awareness, of really knowing what we value, and what matters most to us. And it takes time to know what we really, 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 really want.
Oh, okay. So for the five pillars that you just talked about just now, uh, it's very interesting because I've never thought about five pillars. I only knew two pillars of it, which is like save and spend. And yeah, how do you allocate resources to different pillars of money? And how would you know like if you actually is this a rule of thumb or yeah?
Yeah, so with the five pillars of money, essentially, you could consider, right, if in this circumstance in your life today, you may want to save more. You could say, okay, 60% of my income goes into spending for daily necessities, my rent, right, my transport, my food, my essentials. And then beyond that, you have your 40%, right? 40%, you say that, okay, if this circumstances in my life now as a Gen Z, I want to build my savings, I could say I could put 20% to my savings, or even 30%, right? And then the remaining 10% or 20%, you could allocate it evenly, right? Whether it's to giving it to your parents, giving it as a form of donation or tithing, and then the remaining 5% or 10% you could essentially also put to investing. And that's where you can automate your money in a way that goes into the different pillars, and this could become something that works for you.
But this sounds like a really mathematical equation and like I don't know, it sounds so difficult to just I think budget around these five pillars. And how would you go about doing that in a daily life?
Yes, so you're completely right, because it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Which is why at Playmula we have something called Build the House Day, right? So just like how, for instance, you go to a spa, right? Maybe you go to a spa, or you go to cut your hair like once a month, right? It's like you just have to do it because it's like self-care. You may want to put like that 1 hour or 1.5 hour in a month, and you say that this is my build the house day. So we came up with this term as a way to really put time and space, right? Like mental, physical, financial space into this area where you can begin to then say do a bit of planning. Good news with automation is that if you do it one time, you don't have to keep doing it, right? The system is set up. All you need to tweak, over time is maybe how much in terms of percentages, and with a spreadsheet as well that you can try out. And in fact, with Playmula, we also have an investing module online. It's a course, self-directed course. You can try it out as well. So that teaches you how to allocate your money across the different, financial management stages that you might be in.
Oh, okay. So other than the investing module you have, do you think we have other resources that we can tap into? Maybe like mentors or guidance that I can ask about?
Yes, definitely. So if you think about this aspect of a mentor-mentee relationship, one of the key things that's going to go live soon is actually our Mentors Toolkit. So it's really to enable mentors who are in corporates, or who may be working, who want to give back, right? And you need a bit of guidance in terms of building financial emotional resilience for your mentees. And mentees could essentially be our young people, whether in their first job, whether they could be in ITE, poly, or uni, and you want to find a mentor to actually guide you through the process of financial emotional resilience. So this mentors toolkit will be available as well for our mentors and our mentees.
Then do we know our mentors and what kind of personality types they are?
That's probably something that we can encourage the mentors to do, to try out the personality quiz, and then we can ideally also match you to a mentor.
That's really cool.
Awesome, awesome. So we hope that you'll try it out.
Oh, I will, I will. I definitely will. And other than that, do you have any like secret formula to how to get rich quickly? Because I really need that before graduation, honestly.
Right. I would say, it's not quite a secret formula, but there is a wealth formula that I learned from my mentor, Kevin, as well. And it's really that wealth equals income minus expense times growth times time, right? Income minus expense is really what you have left after you've spent. So the key thing and the secret to building wealth, I mean, you can call it secret, but not really quite a secret, is really how much you have left after you've spend all you have, and then decide how much you want to invest in that over time, because the money you invest gets compounded, right? So
Right.
that's really, really a key skill and discipline that I would say for anyone who wants to build wealth, right? The more you are able to save and then reinvest, the more it can grow and compound over time. And for young people, time is on your side. So, take great use and leverage this aspect of compounding effect of money.
I guess other than money, do you think I can invest in myself? Because that's what everyone has been telling me. Like, oh yeah, you have to invest in experiences, you have to invest in your network. Your network is your net worth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you
Yeah.
have to say about that?
So you're completely spot on, because Warren Buffett says that the best investment that one can make is actually investing in themselves. And by investing in yourself is really about accruing and, acquiring new knowledge, right? That allows you to
Mm,
upskill, to rethink, to redo, to learn new things. So that's really a form of growing your intellectual as well as your experiential capital and even your intellectual capital. So I think that could be very, very powerful for you as a young person.
what other capitals are there in the spectrum, I guess?
So there's 8 forms of capital. And we learned this from permaculture experts, Ethan and Gregory Landua. So there's financial, intellectual, social, living capital, material, experiential, spiritual, cultural capital. So there are 8 forms of capitals that actually have a new definition of wealth, right? Because in our society today, we often see that it's only financial, intellectual, and social capital.
That's true.
And that's the form of wealth, right?
So actually thinking about it, I need to know what adds value to my life and what I want to build on as well. Yeah, that's really cool.
And something that you and I were speaking about earlier today was how you mentioned that actually with 8 forms of capital, you're
Uh-huh.
essentially budgeting
Oh
and actually
yeah,
asking
that's
yourself,
true.
right? Like,
Yeah.
what forms of capital do I want to grow? And so you map out the 8 forms of capital into a map, right? Maybe I'm high in like intellectual and social capital, but actually cultural and living capital may be something I want to grow more in, right?
Mm.
And living capital is essentially, how close you are to nature. Are you growing herbs? Are you growing like things that you can eat, like vegetables at home? And so having yourself be immersed in nature, is a form of actually growing and acquiring like different forms of living capital skills.
Yeah, actually, it gave me a new perspective because right now you're applying all this financial knowledge of like budgeting to your life, essentially all aspects of your life. And it's not even about money, it's
Yeah,
about value.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it becomes more holistic, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because we're not just chasing money for money's sake, we're not
Mm,
accumulating money for money's sake, but really actually thinking, how can we make money work for us?
right.
And how can we make money actually meaningful,
Mm,
right? Such that money actually can be a source of a good change agent. And as we were saying earlier, right, how money is oftentimes at the center of relationships, whether it's with your spouse, your family, your children, your parents, in organizations. How can we make money actually work for us such that money doesn't have a foothold over us and our decisions and even our relationships, right? Because the source of challenge oftentimes at home is money, and we have tense conversations. So the key thing for us is, how do we begin to dialogue in a new language of money, right? To get the skills to have these conversations going around money and what's meaningful for our families and for ourselves.
right. Yeah, that's really profound. Actually, where do I start building whatever habits you were talking about, whatever principles you were talking about?
Yeah, I like that. I think it's a very real question for many of our young people. So I would say write it down and make it happen. There's a power in visualizing and writing it down and actually putting a time to it, right? And then slowly over time, we can begin to make some of these things happen. So to start with, you could say, okay, with the 5 pillars of money, how I would like to allocate that amount of money in percentages. That's another thing. If you decide that you're ready to start investing because you've built up a small savings account with your emergency savings, that's something that you can really start trying to invest in small amounts, right, to some of the stocks, perhaps whether it's in the US market or in the Singapore market. And I think at the end of the day, one of the most important things is really to ask ourselves, if money is a tool for a flourishing life, then what would our version of a flourishing life actually look like? And exactly what you said, right? If money is impact, what does impact and a purposeful life or flourishing life actually look like?
Okay, so what I'm understanding is flourishing life is like an ideal type of life that I have if I don't have these money troubles. Am I right to say that?
So that's actually a very profound question. So when I first thought about the flourishing life, I had an ideal life of what it looks like. And the
Okay.
ideal life looked like, okay, if I have X amount of money, I can do everything I like, and then, I'll be a very happy person. But what I realized in recent times for a flourishing life is really a life of my dreams, but I'm able to navigate difficulty and challenges even in the face of adversity. What this means is that we are all kind of building towards our flourishing life, but there may be challenges along the way. And knowing that, actually, to me, right, what I've come to realize is that if you can live your flourishing life in the present moment, and if your present moment is already flourishing, right, that actually is the flourishing life. And the flourishing life, hopefully, is today, not something that you build like ideally in the future.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you would say it's a journey, but not a destination?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the powerful thing is that we have a vision of the future, but if we're beginning to live that flourishing life and that vision in small sizes like today, like actually the gift is the present. I think it was Wu Gui from Kung Fu Panda who said that the gift of the present,
Oh,
which is
really?
the present. Thank you for taking time to be with us and appreciate you being here, Kathleen.
Thank you, Audrey. I really had a lovely session.
Awesome. And if you really like what we've put together today, we've got more content and videos coming along. Follow us, hit subscribe on our socials as well. See ya!
Bye.
Bye!